Hey everybody, and welcome to the GrowLeader podcast, where we grow leaders that grow churches by helping them reach their full potential. My name is Matt, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Hey, don't forget that all of the information you're looking for about GrowLeader can be found by a quick visit over to GrowLeader.com. There you'll find information about upcoming events like our one-day regional conferences, which are coming to Washington, D.C., Connecticut, and Las Vegas this fall. So if you're in those areas, go get signed up today. And also on the site, you can access completely free resources for your church and learn how you can be a part of our monthly mentoring calls with Pastor Chris. There you'll also find show notes for everything you'll hear in the podcast today. Today, we're going to hear from Donald Miller. Donald is a renowned author, speaker, and CEO of Business Made Simple, a business consultant known for his impactful writings and insights on personal development, business growth, and storytelling. He's written books like Blue Like Jazz and Building a Story Brand, and has since authored several other best-selling works. Donald has inspired countless individuals, including me, and businesses to discover their purpose, embrace personal growth, and achieve remarkable success. Let's jump in right now on a great conversation with Pastor Chris and Donald.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I am honored today to be with my dear friend, Donald Miller, and I think you guys know him as the renowned author and speaker and CEO of Business Made Simple, a business consulting firm that helps people reach their full potential, just like we are trying to in the church world. So I'm really delighted, Don, for you to be here today, because as we were talking before we started the podcast, I actually just came off of about a 6-7 week break celebrating my 60th birthday, my 40
Happy
years.
Birthday, and congrats.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. 40 years of ministry happened to coincide at the same time. And so we had a series of little parties and celebrations, friends, family, grandkids, the whole bit. But I had about 2 or 3 weeks just to rest, recoup, and then ramp back up into ministry. And I had 3 books I brought with me on this break, and yours was at the top of this list, How to Grow Your Small Business. And the reason why I was reading it, because of this role I now have as chancellor of Highlands College, and I'm constantly thinking about how to get the word out, the sales pitch, so to speak, to use your language. What problem are we solving? But then I was reading it, taking notes again with my chancellor hat on, my Highlands College hat on. I was thinking there are a lot of crossover thoughts that are so important for the church world, the pastor world. And I have long said that if pastors had a better business acumen, their churches would be even more successful. It would be easier for them to reach their full potential. So I want to get started just talking about the book. So why don't you get into the origins of it, your reaction on some of the things I've said already.
Well, congrats on, first of all, 60 years on the planet. You don't look 60, you look 50. You look younger than me, and I've got you by 8 years. So, and congrats on 40 years in ministry. The success is obvious. But congrats on, it's a long run. And I think there are not very many people who can stay standing that long, and you're not just standing, you're flourishing. So I think maybe we've got something to learn from you. I'm honored that you would read the book, because as I said before we started recording, you've got plenty of friends who've written books, and you chose mine, and that's amazing. I'm glad it could be helpful. I have long thought that church leaders could learn a lot from the business community, but I've thought even more the business community could learn from the church community, especially, and we don't need to get into it, but content creation and content delivery. That's what businesses struggle with, and churches have figured it out, especially churches like yours are media organizations or media companies. They're great at distilling messages. So I think there's things to learn both ways. But I do think that, the 6 frameworks that are in How to Grow Your Small Business will work for a nonprofit, for a church, or anything. And basically, just to give you a summary of it for people who haven't read the book, the premise of the book, the controlling idea is that your business works like an airplane, that it has 6 major parts, and they've got to come together, and they've got to work together. There's the cockpit, which is your leadership, and the primary job is to cast a vision and say where this thing is going. The right engine is your marketing engine. The left engine is your sales engine. The wings are products and what you offer. The body of the airplane is your overhead, and God knows if it gets bloated, this church is going down, everything's going down. And then the fuel tanks are your cash flow. And if you can manage those 6 parts well, you can pretty much grow any kind of organization, whether it's a business or a church. you change things. The vision of the church is different than the vision of the ministry. The products of the church are different than the products of a business. And I think products are things like, a healthy marriage, obviously the controlling idea is a healthy relationship for me with Jesus. And but then you start to distill those products per demographic. You don't think of them as products, you think of them as ministry outlets, but it's the same thing. And then you've got to manage all the logistics of this thing and keep it lean. And then you can't run out of cash, right? So all of that is in play in any sort of institution, whether you're a business or a church. It's all about leadership. It's what are the block and tackling, if you will, of leadership? And to me, there's a lot of philosophical books and sort of inspirational books out there. I'm not that guy. I'm not a performer. I'm a professor. And I want to break it down into the task list of things that we've got to do. And so I tried to do that in the book.
Yeah, and I actually went through it very slowly and took tons of notes in the margins and made notes on the side of things that I wanted to implement. And I would like to just tackle a few of these because, again, I really believe it'll help pastors have healthier churches, which we believe healthy churches are growing churches. Mm-hmm. And this is the mission of GrowLeader, is to help every pastor and church reach their full potential so that we can fulfill what we believe is our ultimate mission altogether as the capital C church, and that is to reach people and to help people around the world reach people with the gospel of Jesus. And the first is that leadership component. The part of it that struck me the most, I'd love for you to talk about it a little bit, is how important it is not only to have a vision, but have a clarity of vision and mission and be able to communicate it. Really unpack that, because when I teach pastors and leaders, that's right where I begin. It always begins with vision.
A lot of the stuff that I work on, a lot of my books are based on narrative structures, and that's a fancy way to say storytelling. I learned a lot. I learned a lot writing a bunch of memoirs for the years, and I wrote a screenplay, and I even taught a storytelling workshop in my 20s. I've just been obsessed and geeked out on story. The main reason I'm obsessed with it is because it is the most powerful tool in the universe to get and keep somebody's attention. Chris, the average brain daydreams 30% of the time. If I'm teaching it daydreams a little bit more, but mostly it's about 30% of the time. But when you sit down to start a story, a Netflix, series or something like that, or a movie at the theater, your brain will not daydream. It'll pay attention. And story is the only tool known to man that can do that. I think it's one of the reasons that Jesus told so many stories.
Right.
He didn't waste his time with bullet points because nobody was going to pay attention. He told stories. And so I've learned a lot from that. And one thing that is true in storytelling and in leadership is that you benefit a great deal if you're trying to get an audience's attention and keep their audience's attention from something called a controlling idea. So if you and I are sitting down to write a screenplay, the controlling idea is going to be something like an overlooked basketball team from a small town in Indiana wins the state championship against all odds. Well, all of us can say Hoosiers, right? We can name the movie just from the controlling idea. But if the controlling idea for that movie were, a basketball team in Indiana wins the state championship, and also a guy wins the lottery and tries to manage the money, and also a rom-com about, two unlikely people meeting each other and falling in love, and also a gentleman trying to lose 30 pounds and win a marathon, we've lost the plot. Nobody would even know what Hoosiers is if we had added those things to the plot. So what we're talking about when we're talking about a controlling idea is we're talking about the dominant idea that this story is about. And I think so many of us as leaders can learn that when it comes to casting a vision. There's a controlling idea that is going to dominate everything. Now, inside of that controlling idea, a gentleman named Jason Bourne tries to figure out who he is because he's struggling with amnesia. We can have all sorts of subplots. He's trying to get out of a hotel room. There's bullets flying through the door. He jumps out the window. He escapes the people. End of subplot. Lands on a motorcycle. 3 guys come up on motorcycles to chase him. Beginning of subplot. He narrowly escapes them into a farmhouse in the woods where he meets his high school sweetheart. Beginning of love subplot. So the way a story works is you got the overall plot. Jason Bourne wants to know who he really is. And then a bunch of subplots. And I think that's the way a church should work. You've got an overall arching idea for the vision of the church, and then a subplot for youth ministry, a subplot for singles, subplot for college ministry, a subplot. The problem that we get into is subplots don't match plot. So when our plot is the entire world is in an existential crisis, desperately seeking meaning, and we are convinced that meaning comes only through a relationship with Jesus. And here's what that relationship looks like in the college ministry. Here's what that relationship looks like in couples who are married. That's a consistent plot and subplot. But when we say, our plot is to reach people for the gospel, and this ministry over here is going to, teach people how to fish and not connect to the minute. We've lost the plot of this, and the subplots don't match the plot. So consistency is really what's important. And it's important for all of our teams to sit down in a room and say, hey, what's the controlling idea of this what is our mission? All of us probably listening to this want people to know Jesus. So we're going to have the same controlling idea, but you can sort of nuance that for your, the next generation, families, whatever it is that you want to say, that's the controlling idea. People are in pain, and we think Jesus and his wisdom is healing. Or we think the church is where the gospel comes alive. You have a controlling idea. Now, the hardest thing about writing a screenplay and the hardest thing about leadership is not saying yes or coming up with creative ideas. It's actually saying no. It's saying that Jason Bourne can't run a marathon in this movie. You got to throw that out. You say, well, we got this great joke. I remember I wrote a screenplay once, and the funniest line in the movie, the director came to me, he sat down, he knew I was a young, sensitive writer. He sat down and said, Don, the joke can't stay. We had filmed it. And he said, it's got to go. It's a 5-minute scene. It doesn't serve the plot. It's got to go. And I argued. Everybody laughed at it. All the surveys said they loved it. Don, it's got to go. In the end, he was right. Because the movie can't be about 3 or 4 things. So in terms of casting a vision in leadership, that chapter is all about how to cast a vision that drives really results. In a business, it's results. Exactly. And I think in a ministry, it's the same thing. You can measure growth. It's very measurable. And everybody can measure unhealth, like the amount of dysfunction. You got a staff that's leaving all the time, and it's hard to get people in the pews, and cash flow is running out. We've got a problem with leadership at that point. And so casting a compelling vision that invites people into a story is the best way to grow any kind of organization.
Yeah, we actually, when we teach the churches that we work with, we actually begin with that there is this narrative void, and the void is this lack of meaning, both here on earth and, of course, eternal, and that there's that sense of eternity in every person's heart. And that's why we actually use the phrases that people want to know God to find freedom, that they might discover their purpose and make a difference. And then it's the making the difference. Yeah. The Viktor Frankl kind of idea.
I was about to say, you're sounding like my favorite psychologist, Viktor Frankl, and I think he really nailed it. He understood the existential crisis that we're all in. And I think, in my humble opinion, as a non-pastor, that's the job the church is in, is solving people's existential crisis.
Yeah, and help me, even act like a consultant right now if you were helping me, because I believe I think it begins with clarity of language, and then being able to tell it in story. But we've made the language clear, and I think that's one of the things that has helped our church grow and other churches grow, because we have clear language.
Well, I think the way you stated it is fantastic for an internal document. It's fantastic for the deacons. It's fantastic for the board. It's fantastic for the staff, because you can unpack it. And let me just say this pretty frankly, it's fantastic for anybody who is intelligent and is going to give it 10 minutes of thought. I'd change it from the pulpit, and I would actually say something like, everybody is searching for a meaning in their life, and we are convinced that everybody finds their individual meaning, their truth, if you will, by encountering a relationship with Jesus and then serving him in their unique way. I love taking where the world is going and saying, you know what, there's an ounce of truth to that. Let me explain the Christian view of that, rather than, no, you're wrong. I really believe that everybody, I remember it, Chris. I remember, I came to know Jesus in a bathroom of a Southern Baptist church because I was too embarrassed to walk the aisle. Wow. And that was, I don't know if I came to know Jesus then, but it was about my sophomore year at Alvin Community College when I was reading the book of James, and it said, a faith without works is dead. And it hit me that, Don, you're gonna have to live out your faith. And I mean, it was 2 years of what felt like a chemical high.
Wow.
I was so excited to serve God. The existential crisis, if you will, that took place in my life was gone. And I'm actually thankful I finally calmed down. I would have been one of these weird guys on a plane trying to, turning everybody off. But that it became normal, like a marriage, where you just settle into the relationship of it and the service of it. But I think that's true, and I think I love your mission statement. I guess the only counsel I would say is, man, when you put this on a T-shirt, we got to dumb it down.
Yeah, I like it. Let's talk a little bit about the marketing side, because I think a lot of us believe that we have a great church, a great mission, and it's just kind of getting the word out.
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts and unpack some of the stuff in the book around marketing.
Well, there's 3 phases that people go through when they finally buy a product, or they finally attend your church and plug in, or I even think when they finally come to know Jesus. It's just the way relationships work, whether it's a relationship with a brand or a leader or a product. It doesn't matter. Those three phases are curiosity, enlightenment, and commitment. So curiosity is the first phase, and it's a short phase. Basically, you meet somebody, and they say something or do something or present themselves in such a way that they make you curious. Basically curious about whether or not, basically what you feel is, I'd like to get to know them better. So if it's romantic, you meet somebody from across the room and she looks really pretty and you want to get to know her better, and then you talk to her a little bit. But people are only curious actually about one thing, and it's by God's design. They are curious about one thing, and that one thing is survival. And when I say survival, people think food and shelter. That's the bottom of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You move up the pyramid, you get into much more sophisticated ways of survival, tribal associations, saving money, making money, all those kinds of things. But there's something that made us curious. And then we immediately move into the second phase, which is enlightenment. And enlightenment is where we begin to do due diligence about whether or not this adds up, whether or not this person is actually going to be trustworthy, whether or not if I marry this person, it's going to be a nightmare or it's going to be amazing. You date, and with products, you're asking your friends about it. You're watching YouTube videos to see. I bought a car recently. I must have watched 6 hours, I'm not making this up, of YouTube videos about this car, and is this the right car for me? That was my enlightenment phase. And only when you enlighten yourself and do due diligence are you willing to make a commitment. And the commitment phase is when you put skin in the game. And you basically say, okay, at this point, I'm going to put money down. I'm going to show up at church on Sunday. I'm going to do the things that might embarrass me if I'm wrong, that might cost me money or whatever. That's commitment. So curiosity is, wow, she's cute. Enlightenment is a year of dating, and commitment is, will you marry me? And all relationships work in that phase. Now, if we're selling a $5 product, that can happen in 10 seconds. If it's a $50,000 product, it could take a lot longer. If it's a life change and a religion that I'm going to subscribe to, probably not going to happen super quickly.
Right.
So the first job of your marketing is to communicate to people in all 3 phases. You want to communicate something that piques their curiosity.
Give us an example of those 3.
If I go to your landing page, and at the top of the landing page, it says, most people struggle with meaning in their lives. We come together to serve God so that we experience a deep sense of meaning and joy.
Yeah.
That's a very basic message anybody can understand, and it's the sort of message that people would say, tell me more. What does that mean? However, if I go to your message, and I've actually talked to church leaders, and it says, building the kingdom of God on heaven, or on earth as it is in heaven.
Yeah.
I tell them, you realize, you're a sophomore in seminary before you understand what that means. You understand that, right? You're not nobody. You're piquing nobody's curiosity except for somebody who took some seminary class and goes, "Oh, they got the theology right." So you're going to have basically a congregation full of seminary graduates who are going to do nothing but pick your sermons apart, and they're going to drive you crazy. So you want to pique the curiosity of the people, and a lot of times that's just about talking about their pain. Then you want to back that up with sermons and books and podcasts and newsletters, and to explain in short what you mean by that. And then all the time, you're always saying, listen, if you are feeling that life could have more meaning than it does, I want you to know you can have a relationship with Jesus, and you can do that right now. You can do that today, and you do that by walking the aisle like we did in the old Southern Baptist Church, or meet us in room 653 outside the lobby, and somebody's going to talk to you about it, or just give us a call, and we'll call. You know, you're always doing all three at the exact same time because you don't know who's in the room. I always say, you know, that the way you get married is you say, will you go out with me? And she says, yes. And you say, okay, well, then will you marry me? And she says, no. You say, okay, well, then will you go out with me again? Yes. Will you marry me? No. Will you go out with me again? Yes. Will you marry me? No. Will you go out with me again? Yes. Will you marry me? Okay, I'll marry you. That, you know, you just kind of have to, at least that's the way. I didn't get married until 42, Chris, so I had to do this the hard way. But, you know, it's always saying, I want further relationship with you. I want to continue to enlighten you, but also, are you ready? Are you ready? So that's the marketing and the sales coming together. Sales is really about asking for the commitment. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And marketing is about educating people to pique their curiosity, enlighten them, and then drive them toward a commitment.
Even though we don't have a sales department, so to speak, like a business would, how important would it be for a pastor, though, to have basically the sales pitch clear in their own minds? You know what I'm saying?
Wait, I think that, you know, especially, you know, small business owners, pastors, those of us who are not professional salespeople, we're so worried about being pushy.
Right.
You know, and the reason we're worried about being pushy is because we really like people and we respect them. And, you know, we don't want to offend people. I learned a lot about closing the sale or speaking my mind or those sorts of things in the strangest way. I had built my company past a certain point. I told myself I'd buy myself a watch, literally like a wristwatch. I'm not a wristwatch guy. But I said I'd buy myself my first quote-unquote luxury watch. It was in the $800 range. So we're not talking about a really nice one. And for 2 years, I hadn't done it. And I'd gone to some jewelry stores, but I'd never bought the watch. And right. I was in Tel Aviv, Israel, had 3 hours. And, you know, there was a jewelry store there, so I was walking around, nothing to do, put on this watch. Guy asked my name and asked why I wanted to watch. You know, was it my birthday or something? I said, no, I built my company past a certain point. And I told myself I'd buy a watch so I could have kind of a memorial of it and maybe give it to my kids someday and tell them the story. And we talked. He said, well, you want me to box this up for you? Again, Chris, $800 watch. You know, he knows I've got the money. He knows I've got a good reason. There's no reason for me not to buy this watch. And I said, no, you know, I'll think about it. Well, I'm about to get on a flight to New York City. There's no way I'm going to get to New York and say, I better go back and get that $800 watch. Right. Especially you can get it on Amazon for like $700. So he said, hey, listen, Don, you built your company past a certain point. You know you want a little memorial of it. You like this watch. You've got the money. I think this is the right decision for you. Would you like for me to box this watch up so you can take it on the airplane? And I said, yes. That's exactly. And it changed my world in some ways because I realized that good sales is not about coercing somebody into doing something they don't want to do.
Right.
The number one question, they know they want to do it. They know they want to come to your church, or they know they want a relationship with God. They know it. There's a little bit of cognitive dissonance in that moment. And if we could sum up what they're actually feeling, it's this: is this the right move for me? And so a good salesperson is actually going to say, hey, look, you know, I'm looking at the numbers here, and this house is in the budget for you. It's in the right neighborhood. It's got everything that you wanted. I think this is the right house for you. I think I should make an offer. Do you guys want to make an offer? You're going to get way more people buying that house if you're a real estate agent than you would if you just said, would you like to make an offer? Because you're adding an affirmation that this is the right decision.
So craft the language.
I literally think hundreds of thousands of people could come to know Christ if pastors understood that principle, that they're not trying to talk anybody into anything.
Right.
All they're saying is this is the right decision. If you are in an existential crisis, if you are wondering what the meaning of life is, if you're wondering what your purpose is, if you're feeling guilty about some things that you've done in the past, this is the right decision for you. And everybody, you know, people are sitting there going, he's right. This is the right decision, rather than them going home going, I wonder if this is the right decision for me. So I separate marketing and sales. Marketing is the sales pitch, and sales is the affirmation that this is the right decision for you.
That's so good. I think that's something that that again, growing healthy churches understand, and it's something that we do every single Sunday, is making the next step very, very clear and giving them a chance to take it. I even like to separate from the decision of, this is not about joining this church. This is about coming into a relationship with God first. And my little line is, it's the easiest thing you'll ever do, but it will cost you everything. And I try to put the, you know what I'm saying? It's this idea.
Well, it's just like anything. It's like getting married or having a kid. The sacrifices are enormous, and the rewards are exponentially greater than this. The return on your investment is literally infinite in what we're talking about.
I love that so much. Let's finish on one more principle. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left. Because you talk about product optimization. I know the church, Jesus is not a product, but what we offer to deliver the gospel is our Sunday services, our groups, our youth ministry, our whatever, those are. And I love the thought of taking our offerings and constantly making them better. That's one of the things that I preach is, is the right way is the way that's working. And we always ask ourselves, could it work better? And I think one of the things I've seen is that churches get stuck in this is the way we've always done it. And so the product, the offerings have not been optimized. They've not gotten better. Just talk about it a little bit.
What you want to do if you have a small business, and I think it's very similar in a church. In a business, you want to ask yourself, what's working? If you just wake up every day and say, what's working? And then you pour a little jet fuel on that, it's going to work better. But I think a lot of us, especially those of us who are leaders and wired as leaders, we have this sort of top-down authoritarian approach. We're going to make work what we want to work. And I don't know of any relationship or any business that can survive very long if we are not willing to dance with whatever it is that we're leading. I've learned this even more being the father of a 2-year-old. Every night we sit down to dinner, and there's things that I want her to eat, and there's things that she does not want to eat. And I've learned that what I try to literally, Betsy and I talked about this last night, I've learned that we've got to find a flow. Where's her energy flowing right now? It's not flowing toward vegetables. It's flowing toward mac and cheese. We can't do that every night, so let's give her a little bit of this, a little of that. And there's kind of a dance that takes place. And I think the same is true in leadership. And so what we want to do is sit there with our church and say, hey, what is working? If this over here is working, but it's not honoring God, that's out of the question.
Right.
This is working, and it is honoring God, and this feels like the flow of where this church wants to go, what the Holy Spirit, if you will, is doing in this congregation. And so I think just constantly ask the question, what's working and what's not working? And then if it's not working, I don't care how old it is. I don't care how many people have been doing it. If it's not working, we get rid of it. We get rid of it. If there's dead stuff in the garden, you get rid of it. You need stuff that's producing fruit, and culture changes, people change, Holy Spirit adapts, and we just say, okay, well, we're going to figure out what's working and what honors God, and whatever is working and honors God, we're going to highlight, and whatever isn't, we're not going to be married to it.
That's so good. Well, I recommend everyone to pick up Donald Miller's latest book, How to Grow Your Small Business. And I officially, right here on the Grow Leader podcast, want to formally invite you to come teach our students this material as a professor in residence at Highlands College.
That's a done deal.
Come on, let's do it.
I mean, I've been excited. You've mentioned that before, and I've been excited about that. I would love that. It would be such an honor.
We are so committed to having people like you who are actual practitioners and not just theoreticians teaching and mentoring our students. So we're going to make it happen. Thanks again, everybody, for watching or listening today to the Grow Leader podcast. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Hey, everybody, we want to say a big thank you to some of our partners that help make the Grow Leader podcast happen each and every month. The first is the Wesleyan Investment Foundation. For over 80 years, Wesleyan Investment Foundation has helped churches with borrowing and their investing needs. Whether you're dreaming of a new opportunity or seeking wise resource management options, WIF can assist you. Learn more about them at wifonline.com/growleader. Great American Family. Great American Family is America's premier TV destination for high-quality, family-safe programming. As a part of the Great American Media portfolio, they offer content through all major cable providers, and you can visit them at greatamericanfamily.com to find out where you can stream their content. Big thank you to Compassion International. For over 70 years, Compassion International has served the world's most vulnerable children in the name of Jesus through the power of the local church. They've impacted over 2.3 million children worldwide, and you can learn more about how you can be a part at compassion.com/growleader. We'll see you next time.